achieve, what we want to deliberate on, and what the outcomes should be for women financial inclusion and economic recovery, particularly post-COVID-19. So I will say a collective welcome to all our stakeholders, and good morning, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It is actually an honor to welcome you all to the Maiden National Roundtable on Women Financial Inclusion and Economic Recovery post-COVID-19, hosted by New Faces, New Voices Nigeria in conjunction with our parent body, the Grace Marshall Trust. New Faces, New Voices Nigeria is a Pan-African organization which is one of the networks under Grace Marshall Trust. This organization is a business trade support organization whose main objective is to multiply the faces of women in business and finance and build competent women leaders that make a visible positive impact. This organization has been privileged to empower and enable women entrepreneurs in business and export, not just in Nigeria, but amongst our West African sisters and institutions as a platform. Women in cross-border trade in West Africa, AFWAT, which has yielded positive results when it was established in 2018 in Senegal. This roundtable was birthed by Grace Marshall Trust in collaboration with Expert Leaders Group. I know all of us in the room want to know what the Expert Leaders Group is. It was actually a convening of deputy governors, particularly female, across Africa in the central banks. So this roundtable is actually an outcome of that convening, which our deputy governor of Central Bank here in Nigeria was part of the ELG convening that now informed us to hold this National Roundtable, which is the first series of the National Roundtable we are going to hold in Nigeria. The objectives are to advocate for improved access to digital finance, promote women's financial inclusion and entrepreneurship financing, and build a strategic partnership for action. It is essential to state that other sister networks have held their national roundtables. Nigeria is holding its own today, and Ghana will be holding its own by the end of March. The National Roundtable has come even more crucial and expedient because of the strategic repositioning of nations worldwide, including Nigeria, to recover from the devastating effects of COVID-19 pandemic. We are all aware of economic and social disruptions that have affected business enterprises, particularly women-owned businesses. In regard to the theme of the roundtable, building an inclusive financial ecosystem for women-led businesses in Nigeria post-COVID-19, we are privileged to have in attendance distinguished speakers who are experts in their various fields to share from their wealth of knowledge, experience, and expertise to provide relevant insights and way forward strategies. Finally, on behalf of NFMV Nigeria, Board of Trustees and Steering Committee, I would like to express my sincere appreciation and gratitude to the amiable, innovative, and empathic chairperson of the Roundtable, Mrs. Aisha Ahmad, the Deputy Governor of FSS of the Central Bank of Nigeria. Though she will be gracing the occasion virtually, something came up urgently this morning. She would have been here in our midst. I wish to thank her sincerely. To our distinguished speakers and panelists and all the guest speakers here, I say thank you for honoring our invitation to this roundtable. Also, I would like to appreciate my dear sister Cecilia Akitumode, who would have loved to be here with us, a member of the Board of Trustees of NFMV Nigeria, who is unable to join us. She recently joined EcoBank Transnational Incorporated in Lomé and was going to share the EcoBank experience. However, it gladdens my heart that Mrs. Carol Oyedeji, a highly respected and seasoned banker, will be presenting an inclusive finance, a catalyst for economic empowerment of female entrepreneurs. Thank you. We thank Mrs. Oyedeji and EcoBank Nigeria for their participation. I'm not forgetting the ad hoc planning committee, particularly permit me to say Sophia particularly, who has been working back to back end with us at NFMV Nigeria. Thank you, Sophia. And my team, who are very tireless, I thank you as well. Last but not the least, our guests and participants present here in this room and virtual. You are all the round table. You know what that statement means. You are all the round table. It is not about New Faces, New Voices.
Recording in progress.
Whatever New Faces, New Voices does here in this room today, it is you that are sitting in this room. The stakeholders, the participants, the panelists, the presenters, and all of us in this room are the round table. And whatever outcome we're able to get out of this round table will determine and inform going forward, and you are signing a kind of commitment that you are here to support women's social and economic empowerment. Thank you all.
Mrs. Deborah Aminu and her team for all the work that was done, and also thank those on my team that supported this effort, particularly with Sophia, who that helped work on this, and some of the other people that we had on the team. I'm sure we know, that the whole idea around SMEs, I think small businesses are very critical barometer for the health of the, and so that makes this. We are employing almost 60 million individuals. Over 70% of the MSME business owners were aged between 26 and 50 years. So the productive part of the base places around 51 to 48%. Not too bad. Not quite equal, but not too bad. The COVID-19 pandemic itself particularly affected MSMEs, particularly female-owned businesses, which were disproportionately affected. In fairness, women were disproportionately affected across the board. So not just the businesses they run, but all the situations they found themselves, which you see. A UN study highlighted some of the early findings of the impacts of the pandemic you're talking about. So the economic impact, yes, in developing economies, the vast majority of women's employment was in the informal sector, and we all know what happened to the informal sector when we had to have the lockdowns. Women experienced higher job cuts, higher layoffs, and limited access to social protection due to the increased care demands at home. So whilst we're trying to make these changes, around getting a more inclusive, a more equal world, the truth is that in terms of the culture and the expectation, it is still of women as primary caregivers. And we found that they had to revert into that role during the pandemic. The health impacts were also quite visible. Around the world, women make up about 70% of the workforce in the health sector. And we know what happened to healthcare workers. They were more exposed to the virus during the pandemic. We also saw an increased level of gender-based violence. Violence against women increased at an unprecedented rate. Studies in 2021 showed that 33% of women were either subjected to physical and sexual violence during this period. These statistics, coupled with the findings from several research reports that the economic response to the pandemic are properly tailored and are inclusive for economic growth and development. Globally, only about 28.2% of women are represented across managerial and leadership positions. So there's a huge gender gap in leadership as a position.
Inclusive and business survival, revival and inclusive growth. Considering the pre-existing challenges of DG the convening, the roundtables are part and parcel of the interventions established by the Expert Leaders Group Plan of Action as part of our evidence building towards garnering and developing commitment to support gender lens investing towards women entrepreneurs. So as we proceed with our deliberations today, on behalf of the CEO, I will leave you with the rallying call to action and to quote our founder, Mrs.
Percentage points in financial access between men and women in Nigeria specifically. And that really has barely changed since IFINA began measuring financial inclusion in 2008. So we see that not only do we have a gap, but we really, although financial inclusion in Nigeria has been growing incrementally since we began measuring, we're really not moving the needle in terms of equality, in terms of access to financial services. So that's part of why IFINA is so strongly focused on this, and why we partner with many organizations, including some here, to really try to drive women's financial inclusion in Nigeria.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. I will deliver the Director General's paper. Now, understanding the MSME ecosystem in Nigeria, that's just like a wide scope for me to just give a rundown of who the MSMEs are, what affects them, and what is being done for their growth and development in Nigeria. But because of the short time allocated to me, I may not just go through everything. And also, some of the things I would also have loved to say have already been said by Ms. Ashley, and then the Deputy Governor of CBN. Now, let me define MSMEs. The nano, micro, small, and medium enterprises and MSMEs are a very heterogeneous group. MSMEs are found in a wide array of business activities, ranging from the single artisan producing agricultural implement for the village market, the woman roasting corn or plantain by the roadside, the internet cafe in a small town, to a small sophisticated engineering or software firm selling overseas markets, and a medium-sized water production plant producing both sachet and bottled water, a carpenter producing desks and chairs for the local school. The owners may or may not be poor. The firms operate in very different markets: urban, rural, local, national, regional, and international. They embody different levels of skill, capital, sophistication, and growth orientation, and may be in the formal or informal economy. Majority of MSMEs in Nigeria are family-owned, have a low capital base, are located in urban and semi-urban areas, and are largely informal. They are structured across various economic sectors or activities: agriculture, wholesale or retail trade, transportation, services, manufacturing, arts, entertainment and recreation, information and communication technology, mining, quarrying, education, and so many others. Statistical definition of MSMEs varies by country and is usually based on the number of employees and value of assets and/or sales and value of assets. Due to its ease of collection, the most commonly used variable is the number of employees. In Nigeria, MSMEs are defined based on the number of employees and turnover. The reviewed 2021 to 2025 National Policy on MSMEs developed by the Agency for the Growth of the MSME subsector in Nigeria classifies MSMEs into 4 categories. The first is nano enterprises with employment of 1 to 2 persons, or what we call the homestead, turnover of less than 3 million naira. Micro enterprises are those with employment of between 3 to 9 persons, turnover of between 3 million to 25 million naira. Small enterprises with employment of 10 to 49 persons, turnover of over 25 million naira but less than 100 million naira. Then we also have the medium enterprise, which is the largest of the classification, with employment of between 50 to 199 persons, turnover of over 100 million naira but less than 1 billion naira. Now, what are the role of MSMEs in economic development, the Nigerian outlook? There is a growing recognition of the important role micro, small, and medium enterprises play in economic development. They play a pivotal role through several pathways that go beyond job creation. They are growth supporting sectors that are not only contributing significantly to improve living standard, but also bring substantial local capital formation and are responsible for driving innovation and competition in developing economies. Governments at all levels have undertaken initiatives to promote the growth and development of MSMEs. The general perspective is that MSMEs are seen as accelerating the attainment of broad socio-economic objectives, including poverty reduction, employment generation, wealth creation, among others. According to the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, UNIDO, SMEs have a significant role to play in economic development. They form the backbone of the private sector. They make up over 90% of enterprises in the world and account for 50 to 60% of employment. Now, the 2020 National MSME Survey Report that has already been mentioned by the speakers, that is the survey that was carried out by National Bureau of Statistics and SMEs. We present some figures that have shown a significant shrink in the total number of NMSMEs in Nigeria. The 2020 report has it that MSMEs are 39,654,385. That is a reduction in what obtained in the previous survey that had MSMEs being 41.6 million enterprises in Nigeria, approximately, and a decrease by about 3.5 in NMSMEs' contributions to gross domestic product. However, the 2020 survey reported an increase of about 3.7 in subsectors' contribution to employment in Nigeria. The summary is as follows. Total number of NMSMEs are 39,654,385. Then the total number of nano and micro enterprises, two of them are lumped together. There are 38,413,420 nano and micro enterprises in Nigeria, which represent 96.9% of the total MSMEs in Nigeria. The total number of small and medium enterprises, that's the bigger two, are 1,240,965 enterprises, representing 3.1% of the total NMSMEs in Nigeria. Then the contribution to employment is 87.9%. Contribution to GDP is 46.31%. Contribution to export is 6.21%. What are the challenges facing MSMEs in Nigeria? Of course, there are so many of them, and I'm sure a lot of us know that already. As in many developing countries, MSMEs in Nigeria have not achieved their full potential as a result of some critical inhibiting factors. These factors can be classified into internal or external. The exogenous issues are those imposed by external circumstances and institutional deficiencies, while the endogenous, that is internal issues, are typically human-related and are mostly brought about by lack of depth, knowledge and expertise of participants in the sector. Now, the internal issues: low operating capabilities and capacities and huge skill gaps in terms of management, technology, knowledge and attitudes. Predominance of necessity entrepreneurs over opportunity entrepreneurs. Financial illiteracy and or mismanagement. Strong family ties and disregard for business formalities. Non-recruitment of qualified personnel. Lack of perseverance and staying power, especially when the business is going through tough times. Poor record keeping, especially of account books. Poor attention to product standardization. Low adoption of ICT, e-commerce and or e-payment options. Lack of exit and succession plan. Then the external issues are the weak infrastructure, especially in terms of power, transportation, and workspace. And I believe everyone here, we are not finding it funny with lights. You just have something like 3 or 4 hours a day. Then you can imagine what is happening with the subsector. 2, weak and uncoordinated business development services. Poor access to vital resources, especially finance. Weak institutional framework for generating and disseminating pertinent, structured, current and accurate business information. Fiscal disincentives manifesting largely in multiple taxation. Weak access to inputs and product markets. Unfair competition with dumped product substitutes. If the MSME sector is able to surmount these issues constraining its growth and development, it will be better positioned to contribute significantly to the GDP. Now I'm just going to go through some of the government efforts at developing the MSME subsector. In view of the challenges confronting MSMEs in Nigeria and in recognition of the numerous prospects of MSMEs and the need to encourage the growth of entrepreneurs and enterprises in Nigeria, successive administrations have over the years employed monetary, fiscal, trade and industrial policy measures at the macro level to develop the MSME subsector. Now, some of these measures, well, they've already been mentioned earlier by the Deputy Governor CBN. Now, I'll just mention a few here too. Number 1 is the establishment of the National Enterprise Development Program, NEDEP, in 2013 to provide loans, skills acquisition, entrepreneurship training, and business development service to business owners in Nigeria.
We have presence in over 33 countries in Africa. So we have very deep expertise managing female entrepreneurs across the continent. Now to the topic at hand, which is inclusive financial services as a catalyst for economic empowerment of female entrepreneurs. When I read that, even I had to struggle, but that was good. Now, to do justice to this, we first have to understand, the concept of inclusive finance, which is often mistaken for microfinance in the first instance. The world itself has close to 2 billion people who lack adequate access to financial services. You know what? 60% of these are women. Now, within sub-Saharan Africa, the estimates are that 65% of Africans or adults are financially excluded. Out of these, 63% women. So what we are saying is that close to about 500 million adult women in Africa are actually financially excluded. Now, bringing this home to Nigeria, financial inclusion rate in Nigeria is rising. It's currently in the high 60s. And that's because we have a plethora of, payments, agency banking. So a lot of women are now somehow finding themselves, now having access to formal financial services. But out of all this, only 45% of women are actually accessing these formal financial services when you compare it to 56% of men. Now, inclusive financial services is so important for poverty alleviation, no matter how we look at it, and the overall well-being of humanity, which is why the United Nations, makes it a broad headline in their sustainable development goals. The impact of actually empowering women through this financial, inclusion agenda initiatives has such, positive impact on economic development of any country. So it must be a strong area of focus for all requisite stakeholders. In fact, according to Global Entrepreneurship Monitor, Nigeria actually boasts the world's greatest number of female entrepreneurs. So you can imagine if we can capitalize on that base, bring them more into the formal sector or formal finance sector, and then see the impact they can actually add to the economy. The question then is that, why do we have so many women that are financially excluded? Why? And I'll just name a few. Many of them actually center around, socio-economic drivers. What are they? Things like marriages, things like, lack of ownership, basic like that. Religion also, adds to that. Low income, rural versus urban. And then women are less educated in Nigeria. Lower income. So some of these things are just bottlenecks to even getting them actually involved in the more formal sector of finance. And then if you look at it, female entrepreneurs, they are SMEs, and they are typical impediments SMEs face. That's, female entrepreneurs also face. And we've talked about a few. Capacity building, we talked about that. Access to markets, actually spoke about that earlier. Access to finance, these are big issues, and there are also issues that can also exclude female entrepreneurs from the formal finance sector. Now, inclusive financial services have to address all these factors that exclude, women from the formal finance sector. And like I said earlier, they may be strictly financial in nature or not, and there are many forms. There are a large array of ways we can actually get more women into the formal finance sector. Even offering basic savings solutions, just letting them understand that they can just, save in a formal savings account and be able to distinguish between profit and equity, so that whatever they have in their savings account, they can always plow back to help them grow their businesses. So that's one way. And then there are several financial products and services that can help small businesses scale up. The good thing is that many stakeholders now realize the importance of ensuring that women, female entrepreneurs, actually have access to formal finance sector because of the impact on the economy as a whole. So you see various stakeholders, whether governments, whether the central bank, whether banks, whether multilateral agencies. You see them, coming up with solutions that really support women. And they're in various forms. One can be through gender financing. There's a lot on gender financing now. So you have a lot of multilateral agencies actually supporting gender financing on, with single rates, really discounted interest rates. So that's one way. Another way is through risk sharing. What do I mean risk sharing? Collateral is always an issue. There are a lot of agencies now that actually come forward and say that as far as you're lending to a woman, we would actually provide that guarantee. So you actually see some banks now actually advertise, we give you collateral-free loan. Sometimes not actually the banks, the multilateral agencies are standing behind. But if you give a collateral-free loan to a woman, you see some of the multilateral agencies actually say, we will guarantee you up to 80% of it. So some of these are actually, tools that a lot of female entrepreneurs can actually use to scale up business and bring them more into the formal finance sector. There are also various payment schemes that are available. A lot of banks now are running massive agency banking landscape, and they're bringing in a lot more women into the finance sector. So they go into the marketplaces and they see the stalls that these women have, and they make them agents of the bank. So somehow the women, they themselves, are now coming more into the formal finance sector. And then we have structured group financing solutions that connect local women, farmers and traders to money and markets, access to markets. We talked about cooperatives earlier. Even petty traders, or if smallholder farmers, let's say the female smallholder farmers, even by joining, let's say, an association, it can help her have access to higher markets. And I'll give you a simple example. A smallholder farmer of maize, a woman actually, planting maize, she will typically have just harvested it and sold it to somebody down the road. But if she's a member of, let's say, the Maize Association of Nigeria, she can actually do a lot more maize and sell directly to Olam. And so she's actually scaling up her business. Same thing with farmers in the north. A small female farmer just, planting wheat and harvesting wheat may just be selling it locally. But if she joins the association of wheat farmers, she can actually sell her produce to flour mills. So those are the ways that some of these, female entrepreneurs can begin to have access to the more formal finance sector, and then having, knowledge about how they can potentially scale up their businesses and do a lot more. Ashley mentioned something like Isusu before. Even joining basic cooperative societies, those are little ways of gradually inching into the formal finance sector. Because if you sit on your own and you don't have that level of exposure as to how much more opportunity actually, exists out there, then you just remain in a cocoon, just living a subsistence life while doing your business. Now, inclusive financial services can also be non-financial in nature. A lot of what I've spoken to, it depends on how exposed you are, how knowledgeable you are. So training is also part of inclusive financial service, no matter how you look at it, capacity building, because it's giving them exposure to how much more they can do or how much more they can grow, and that's ultimate impact in the general economy. Now, financial services inclusion as a key factor is a key factor to financial independence and empowerment for women. It's so important. Why? It helps their self-esteem. It helps their self-esteem. They become more confident. They are more capable of making more informed decisions. They run their finances more effectively.
That, of course, we have developed our programs and our schemes to support what the government is doing. And we do that in collaboration with the different government agencies and departments. Now, issue of the interventions is actually, I retweak the topic because it's intervention programs, not interventions programs and policies. Because interventions, by what they are supposed to assist at a particular time. So when a gap is noticed, a help comes in, which is the intervention. Now we have programs. Programs have a start date and an end date. So I want to just lay these foundations. So of course it means we will start in a particular year, intervene in a particular sector if there's an issue, till there's some kind of traction.
From inception in 2015, we've had a lot of beneficiaries of the social safety net programs, most of which are women. I would gladly tell you that 94% of the beneficiaries are women. And post-COVID-19 was an eye-opener for all of us, worldwide, especially the ministry. We had to take very innovative steps to see how we can impact the lives of citizens, especially women, which is very dear to the ministry, being a female minister as well. We were able to come up with certain programs that would support women. The social safety net program, like I said, has touched every state of the Federation. There was also an initiative post-COVID, which is the RRR, the COVID-19 Relief Fund, which had also benefited a lot of women, and it's still going on. It's a 6-month program that would give stipends to women, about 5,000. This is not just women. Most, yeah.
I am from Bank of Agriculture, and the bank is solely owned by the government through the shares of the CBN and the Ministry of Finance Incorporation. The mandate is to provide credit services to the rural and non-rural populace. During the COVID, it's affected. In Bank of Agric, we have so many loan products for our women, and most of the sizable loan amount of our loan portfolio goes to the women. And what we saw after COVID is that women were out of business, and consequently our NPL was affected. So what we did there is that we for some of them, that we saw that if we inject little money into them, they will come back. What we did that was we injected little funds to their business, and we gave them a longer repayment period so that they will not stabilize, sustain their business, and also pay our loans comfortably. Coming to your questions, how do we deploy? We are government bank, and just like my sister in Sweden said, our problem is funding. If we applied to Central Bank of Nigeria under this their targeted credit facility under the COVID, but we were denied. We didn't. So what I would say that government should, yes.
We'll get a response. You never know.
We were denied. We were not given because we applied for it in order to give our customers, but they didn't approve it for us. We wrote and nothing. So in that sense, government should look at agencies that are targeted towards empowering women, so that they get more funds to them, so that they will be able to women sustain their business.
Fantastic.
A number of challenges have been highlighted in the course of our conversations so far. And one that is very key is the fact that the problems women have are actually like underlying issues around illiteracy, the lack of access to funds. A number of them are not even on the mobile technology platform. Main strategy document review here, by the central bank. I was very excited when a lady who came from Sterling Bank, mentioned that she's a one-woman office who caters for those kind of interventions. So I met her and I told her, I said, I think something exciting is happening in the bank. She said, look, sir, I've gone to Sterling Bank. I got to the point of almost getting this loan disbursed, and they came up with other conditions that I could not meet. And quite a number of people would have been faced with that challenge. This is a very educated, highly educated woman, so she's not illiterate. She has the information, but she couldn't just meet the conditions. So truth be told, since we are making deliberate effort to ensure that women access this, let's be true to it and see that the conditions that we put for them could be something they will surmount. We can't run from the challenge of socio-economic or socio-cultural issues. Quite a number of women in different regions are socially restricted. And we know this. Some people don't even have access to land. So when you tell them that they should present some sort of collateral, I was very excited to hear that there's a national collateral strategy in place. Yes, registry in place. So how many people are aware? We're still coming back to the underlying issues, that bedevil the typical woman. I always encourage us to look beyond us in this room, even though some of us are actually, in the sense of it, excluded financially. But when you look at the average Nigerian woman, we need to actually address those drivers of our challenges. And those drivers are very, very key, that we talk to them before we even take them up to the level of innovation. I try to encourage them, but along the line, of course, they rattled out of it, and NAFDAC is doing its own. The fund providers are doing their own. Yeah. So we create this very stiff operating environment that is not very ideal for business to thrive, especially the women. Thank you.
Sunday Thomas, I'm the head of financial inclusion, Alima Gajira, and also Aisha Bashir. You can see it's all about women. So this is a very nice topic, and I've been listening to the discussants, and I've been hearing about intervention, and it's all about funding and all that. But we have not actually looked at the risks that women carried in their businesses, and that's where insurance comes into. In this climate, in this Nigeria, for us, insurance we take insurance out of compulsion, not voluntarily. So because of, one experience or other, or maybe not being aware. So basically, to your question on what the National Insurance Commission is doing, we have what we call microinsurance. A microinsurance is a type of insurance cover, but it's basically designed for low-income earners. It's targeting the low-income, the SMEs, the entrepreneur, and household, the low household. Then, as a regulator, as a National Insurance Commission, what we do is to regulate the insurance institutions. We don't have any intervention funds like the CBN, which is the big sister regulator. So basically what we do is that we have microinsurance, we come up with a guideline. This is an enabler to come up with microinsurance products. So we have partnered with GIZ, we are a FINA, to come up with this guideline. Actually, the guideline was a little because everybody is learning. When it comes to conventional insurance, it takes a lot. Then when it comes to micro, you have to look at the accessibility, the premium, the platform, and all that. So we have to look at the regulation over and over and over to get it right. Then in 2020, the pandemic came and all that. But I'm glad to say that as of today, we have 6 registered microinsurance. And they do have a product. Example like credit loans. This offer the microinsurance protection to women. There is this GOES, the microinsurance company. It's registered in Lagos. It has its operation office in Lagos. They go into partnership with what we call distribution channel. These distribution channels are informal sectors that we formalize through the service level agreement. For example, the trade women associations, the NGOs. So these companies, get access to these informal sectors. So GOSI has SLA that is to enable them distribute their products. For example, the micro protection that has to do with the credit aspects. With Vivo Nigeria. Vivo Nigeria, don't know, is more of the women, female, empowering women, capacity building, assistance. So they go into to offer this credit loan to them, to the platform, to access. It's basically on women. And the product they do offer to them is credit life. This credit life has to cover in the terms of the loan they have borrowed, in terms of like maybe there is a fire outbreak to their business, accident on their way to get the business, though they are unable to pay the outstanding loans. So
requesting for utility bills, as a form of ID. Clearly we need to be thinking a bit differently when it comes to women because there are indeed peculiarities. The other thing we see a lot is the guarantor requirements, where women are required to go and find somebody else of financial standing to come and stand in the gap. We all know that culturally, in many of our communities and societies, it's just not possible to do so. And of course, the lack of basic bookkeeping skills to enable you build a track record and present a credible business case, which probably was the case with the lady who applied to Sterling Bank and had her facility turned down, or rather asked to bring more information. So therefore, while it would be unfair to say that women are being intentionally excluded, the evidential outcomes and economic impact clearly point to a devastating dislocation. And let's pause to consider some of these outcomes. Women being deprived of the opportunity to maximize their incomes, to create jobs for youths, as we heard earlier, and other women, and to participate in the political process through financial support for credible candidates and causes. One of the things that we don't realize is that to make a real change in politics, you need to have money. You need to be able to back candidates. You need to be able to put your money where your mouth is. And if we don't create and own capital, how can we therefore expect to make any changes? The key, therefore, to making the difference is partnership and collaboration. The Nigerian financial ecosystem is broad. There are a number of providers. Fintechs, FIs, non-bank FIs, and they all play a key role. To start with, as I said earlier, we need to develop unique women-friendly financial products. And I'm not talking about dumbing down products. It's just understanding that women are an interesting demographic and taking the time to understand them and to understand how your products can interface with them and how you can encourage them to take up the products. We also need regulatory support for women and targeted interventions through us scaling more women-led businesses. To reap the full benefits, financial services providers must collaborate and create structures that encourage risk sharing. We heard this earlier. And when I was talking to my dear auntie earlier, I did say to her that banks on their own cannot provide facilities at rates below what your investors would require. We're not non-profit organizations. So the only way really to create these types of interesting funding products, and I believe we heard, it might have been Carol when she talked about it earlier, is about risk participation with DFIs. The CBN is a fantastic organization and has partnered with a number of institutions. BOI continues to do so, DBN, and it's really through working through these types of structures that we can get products that work. Secondly, the collaboration needs to extend to the co-creation of business advisory and support services. I talked already earlier about capital not being the biggest issue. The biggest issue is actually business advisory and support. And so we need to think differently. We need to start to understand the needs that women have, understand the unique challenges that they're facing, and then juxtapose that against the products that we are hoping to provide. And you might ask me, how do we do this? And I think the one thing that we are missing in all of this is how do we get business support agencies to work independently but collaboratively? Because one of the things that I have seen is when you put somebody in a position to advise somebody else, for me to take the advice, I have to believe you have my best interest at heart. You're not working for a bank who's trying to push a product. You're not working for an insurance company that's trying to push a premium. You really want to work with me because you want to scale my business. And so if the entire ecosystem came together and worked with cooperatives, ASUSUs, women associations, farming associations, and empowered individuals within these ecosystems with knowledge, with tools to provide an independent advice, I believe that it works two ways. One, we will see better take-up of our products, but more importantly, we will get valuable feedback. What is it that is really happening? You know, you get on-the-ground data, which is critical. And lastly, the collaboration needs to also include the government and regulatory bodies. We cannot ignore the backlog at the Corporate Affairs Commission. We cannot ignore the national and state chambers of commerce, which play a really, really big role in trying to get us off the ground. Of course, tax agencies and ministries. To really change women's status from informal to formal businesses, we all have to work together. So I'll leave you with an old African adage. I like to always leave you something to think about. They say heavy is the head that wears the crown. And we, the financial ecosystem, is currently wearing a very heavy crown, right? But we have a unique role of being able to influence economic outcomes. And so whilst the task may seem quite onerous, working together, I believe that we can certainly make a difference. Thank you.
Or my focus is on the community, and so we are considered to be the UPS Foundation. So I must admit, we're not a financial institution per se, but we are a multinational corporation. We operate in 220 countries and territories, and so we have a heart and a focus to be able to help our communities around the globe. And so working hand in hand with different business organizations to be able to uplift our communities is our pride and joy. I'll give you one great example besides supporting New Faces, New Voices Nigeria. We have a partnership with Opportunity International. They are actually based in the USA, but they have banking offices around the globe. And so one of their offices in particular that sits in Uganda, as well as their office in Ghana, we have a partnership with them to be able to come in and uplift women entrepreneurs in the area of microfinance. And so that is the key partnership that we have that gives funding to women entrepreneurs who have been in business for at least 6 months. These are collateral-free loans, and is helping them, whether it's agribusiness, whether it's beauty supply, apparel, or whatnot, but it helps to lift them with their businesses to scale up and to be able to hire others. And you asked what type of outcomes we've seen. The program started literally 1 month before COVID-19 hit, rolled out the program in Uganda. Of course, COVID hit. We were nervous. We pretty much knew that we were not going to be able to help women entrepreneurs because everybody was on lockdown. A year later, by December 31st of 2021, Opportunity International Uganda had awarded over 1,000 loans to different women entrepreneurs within Uganda. And so when I say our, UPS, to our surprise, that was a huge victory, a huge win, considering the fact that the world was shut down in COVID. But yet we were still able to walk away with great success with just a year of the program being in existence.
Thank you very much for
celebrating your International Women's Days.
Thank you.
I don't really want to blame the last speaker. When she came, she ignored the men in the house. I think she's still in the mood of celebrating the Women's International Day. Having said that, I also want to use this opportunity to appreciate us for this meeting. The organizers, I think it is quite timely and it is a very wise thought. When I was sitting down, I was reviewing the interaction, discussions that were ongoing. I found out that there is need for us to have a very strong and viable collaboration in the activities that we are doing. By the time when we do those kind of collaborations, I can assure you that we'll have a better society. The common understanding is women do better than men in court. For us, National Association of Microfinance Banks is the umbrella body of 800 and plus microfinance banks in the country licensed by CBN. We are the National Secretariat of the association. We coordinate the activities of all the microfinance banks. We interact with them. We share ideas like the feedback we are receiving here. We take it back to them and we lay it before them to see how we grew up our subsector, which is the MFPs. Having said that, when the interaction was ongoing, I found out that there is urgent need for us to have this collaboration in various aspects. The panelists before I come on board here, most of them, if there were collaboration among them, most of the operation and activities would have been seamless. But we discovered that there have been a lot of collaboration in most of our activities. By the time when we have this collaboration, for instance, we are seated here, and if I ask how many of us have been to our villages for the past 3 months, I don't think we'll have much. But yet we are sitting here discussing on behalf of the women in the rural areas. Are we together? Now, if we collaborate, these MFBs are scattered all over the places in the rural areas. And they are always there to support the rural dwellers. Yet, we still have some challenges. I learned from some of the activities of CIMIDAN. She listed a number of things. When we were discussing with her, I saw a lot of activities that are ongoing in Simidan. The same thing with micro-insurance and most of the other panelists that were raising concern. But there is need for us to have this collaboration so that most of this discussion we should cascade it down to the rural areas, rural women. These women are there in need of these financial services. Like the traders' money, for instance. If these funds were channeled through MFBs, I don't think government may have much influence, or government officials may have less influence into it. But because there's no those collaboration, and yet sometimes we feel that some of these institutions, which is the FSPs, are not doing what is expected of them. They also have their limitation. And like we have been saying, these challenges are there. By the time when we collaborate with one another, we should be able to design and execute policies that will meet the need of these women at those rural areas. For instance, some of the products, pricing. For instance, if an MFB price and the entrepreneur high, if we are collaborating, you approach the National Association. We are not too comfortable with this MFB. When we were interacting, one of our participants, she drew my attention, even before I came, she underlined the National Association of Microfinance Bank, and we got talking. She has a challenge. If not because of this collaboration, wouldn't have this opportunity to have this interaction with us. Are we together? Mm-hmm. So some of this collaboration, they are very, very vital, and they will create a scene where some of these products will be beneficial to these women at that area. If any MFB, for instance, is charging high interest, you have with the collaboration, you talk to us, CBAN will be there. And by the time when we look at all those things, they iron out those things. We also look at the areas of business intelligence. Just like what we have been saying here, we have been learning a lot of things among ourselves here. And by the time when we cascade this down to our people in the rural areas, it will go a long way to help them. In fact, some of our women, they might have not heard of micro-insurance. Are we together? Mm-hmm. They might have not had a lot of other services that are ongoing in the urban areas. Most of these, as far as I'm concerned, some of us, we don't need some of these things that we are discussing. But I know that some of you are discussing this on behalf of those women at the rural areas. And I hope that at the end of it all, we should be able to take it down to those women in the rural areas. That will go a long way to help them. Another aspect I also want to look at is that with this collaboration, we will create a lot of opportunities for these women at those rural areas. In fact, I know, like for instance, in my MFB, I know of a woman that has been testifying that 5,000 naira, this ordinary 5,000 naira that I will just use in taking taxi to my office, that is a turning point in her life because she was able to have access to this money. Why should you give a customer 5,000 naira and you are asking him to bring this collateral, bring this, bring that? But if we have this collaboration, we should be able to provide those services to them.
Are actually targeted at the banked segment as such. And not so many are speaking directly to the informal sector, let alone female in informal sector. That is the first obstacle that we are finding. And the second one is that often we are thinking about products just as product design and product delivery, but product life cycle is much more than that. So it starts with the product design, the product development. However, it cuts across product delivery and product marketing, adoption, and in the end, usage. So what we are doing in 9PSB when it comes to product development, we are actually going out there and listening to that informal sector, to different targeted user groups, associations, as POA, as NAWA, as many other cooperatives, and trying to mirror their habits, their daily needs that they have, to translate it into digital space. It's a long way. It's not an easy way to as to maybe design an app from a desktop app, how someone said earlier, but it's rather a response to their needs. And as such, we are not reinventing the wheel. I mean, the insurance products or the micro-pension products have been there in the market already. But when we are designing our products and our payment services, we try to design them to reflect their lifestyle. And when we market them, we also try to speak their language. So we are not selling microinsurance, but we are selling protection of their family, or ability to go for their children to go to school and so on. So it's very important to communicate properly as such. Now, when it comes to delivery, of course, even if the product itself is developed and it's the greatest product of all, the delivery part requires, obviously, for the informal sector, for women in the informal sector, to have access to it. And access can be either offline or online. When it comes to offline access, it is of great importance to address the lack of, whether it's through USSD, if you are talking about feature phones, whether it's through the app, there is definitely a lot of policy issues and actions that could be done to lower maybe the cost of USSD for the first-time users for that, or to give a different policy-originated incentives for that to happen, with the final goal of financial inclusion. And then, as I mentioned, the adoption and usage, adoption severely depending on financial literacy, which we touched already and spoke about it quite extensively. And usage, again, something that we pay a lot of attention to in 9PSB is customer service and delivery, customer excellence and support. And only when all those points are addressed, then we believe that we can actually continue building the products that we have even now for the informal sector, and then to develop it much more. And just for the end, to add that it's not only on words when it comes to payment service banks, at least. It's in our mandate to ensure that we have 25% presence in the rural areas, and we are targeting much more in 9PSB to have.
For your question, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Mrs. Aisha, for putting this together. This is more than a dialogue for me. I think this is like a movement, and I think that's how I want all of us to see this, a movement. At the end of this session, I'll answer your question, please, but at the end of this session, I think that we should put some points together where we want to go to. We should draft a roadmap. We should be deliberate about this. Oh, okay. Thank you, Ashley. Ashley is one of our donors. So FSI, we're about empowering startups and enhancing financial innovation in Nigeria. Speaking to the barriers, and this is one great challenge I have. When CBN or any of the policymakers release any circular or policy, they don't think about every other aspect of the economy. They largely speak to the banks or the big players. And then we'll have to go back to the table. So let's talk about eNaira, for instance. eNaira was released, and the primary focus was just the commercial banks. They're back at the table now, considering the microfinance institutions, considering the mobile money operators. So I think that if we allow this to continue, these barriers will continue to hinder. Looking at the cultural and social barriers, and a lot has been said today in this room. We've talked about cultural issues and all of that. Just imagine the president of Nigeria saying, train a girl child. A statement coming from the presidency. That will cause a change. It will change the narrative in Nigeria. So these hindrances, to an extent, affect the adoption of fintech products or financial services. Bringing it home, COVID-19 was not didn't just have its downside, it was also a blessing. We saw the uptake of financial services products. The greatest challenge I see is the fragmentation in the value chain. And that's still a problem today. So I'm a trader, a micro trader, I sell my goods and services. I live on daily pay. And my suppliers are not integrated, right? So I have to go to a particular market. Distribution chain is largely cash. It's not digitized. And that's why they suffered a lot. So when the markets were closed, they could not act, they could not order for supplies. There was no channel, there was no platform. And everybody in this room should be looking at the value chain. How can the value chain be integrated? Additionally, we all are working in silos. I've heard of names I've never heard of before in this room. In fact, I've heard so much, I've learned so much just listening from the beginning of the session till now. So many initiatives, but working in silos. If we want these barriers not to hinder the proliferation of products or digital financial services, the uptake of digital financial services for female entrepreneurs, I think there's a need for everybody to work together. The third thing I would say is, it may sound unpopular, but I don't think the interventions should come only from government, if you ask me. I think that the private sector has a huge role to play. If you want to see things move forward, there has to be public-private partnership. It's very key, it's very important. If you want to see Mr. Igbogun ask the question, are the women ready? And we said that we are ready. We need to set up a fund. It might just be 0.001% of what you have, but set up that fund. Now we are looking at the existing market structure. We are looking at the existing entrepreneurs that are excluded. What are those coming out of school?
Women don't belong to, especially those of us in the rural area, in the informal sectors. So you see, we're already excluded. But from that, we're already excluded. And then we're also excluded because they're down in the rural sectors. We don't have what it takes probably to go to the bank and open accounts. Sometimes most of the banks will tell you they need permission of your husband to open accounts. So with the introduction of fintech now, you discover that all these barriers have been broken. We are glad that fintech is here. We are glad that women are participating because they have access to it. They are close to the people. They are close to the women down there. And this is removing the women from the informal sector to the formal sector because it creates access to finance. They can easily access finance due to their less stringent method. It's very easy to access funds from them. And I was surprised some months back. I went to a very, very remote village for burial. And lo and behold, I saw a POS. I was like, what do I do? I don't have cash. I forgot because, you know, once you're in the city, you're used to cashlessness. And I just got there and I was, wow, what do I do? How do I access funds? And they said, there's POS here. I'm telling you, it was a remote place and I could access funds. So you see, this is opening up to women. Because of some other services they provide, it's taking the women away from subsistence farming and making them become traders, businesswomen. They can now trade. They even trade online. Some of them can give you their money they have saved and tell you to trade with it. So these are actually affecting the women from the informal sectors and increasing their capacity to acquire more funds, to access to funds, to access to education, and even access to the use of modern technology. Yes, we have been told here so many things here today that phones, women have phones, and most of our phones are actually not smartphones. That is true. But because of the knowledge that we are beginning to have down there, that this is the way to go, that even while we are there in the rural area, we can sell our tomatoes, we can sell our ewedu and our alefu online. The women are saving to get these phones and to be able to transact their business. It is surprising to know that women in the villages are now selling their products online. You go to market seller. I was coming from my place one of these days, some time back from Mina, and I said, let me buy yams on the road. And you won't believe it. It was through transfer I paid for those yams.
to a local Gwari woman. So you see, it's bringing them out and it's giving them that self-confidence that they lack. Now they know they can take control of their finances, they can take control of even their children's education, because they know that once they invest in their children's education, the children will even come back to, in turn, to assist them. And they can make decisions about what to do with their funds. The men can no longer collect their savings from them. That risk is no longer there. So many things.
Armchair banking. Sit in your AC in Lagos and decide that this is what the woman in my village in Hadeja needs. We have gone to them and we have had conversations with them. So we created a financial inclusion version of Altmall called Fairmall. So Fairmall allows aggregation. So most people are aggregating towards selling to a larger off-taker. So we're not there yet. We're still working on it. But in a nutshell, that's the strategy. Thank you.
What we are doing and what we can do is to serve as a channel for disbursement of those products of different other product developers and product and content owners. And I think indeed the suggestion that my fellow colleague speaker said that we should all actually engage and come together to discuss and to develop, to deliver those products as such. Thank you.
Bank of Industry, most banks suffer. That's why they're not willing to give you facility to start up, because the repayment is always difficult. But if we have a properly fine-tuned framework that will involve all players, we all play our small roles and that we can close that gap. To drive financial inclusion within the entire ecospace and all that. But in 2018, there were some adjustments and all that to allow for a more inclusive approach, especially factoring women into the game plan and all that. Fintechs and the MMOs have continued to deploy solutions, including agent banking, expansion of products and services to win women's loyalty, while fintechs continue to deploy solutions to facilitate these product offerings. Developing women-specific projects and services stem from the need to treat women segment in the ecospace separately from the normal solution that we apply to the general market and all that, as women's needs are specific and unique based on their gender coloration and all that. But in the course of the COVID-19 impact, we saw a major upturn in the activity and participation of women in the industry. We may never know how much of the impact the economy suffered or what it is going to suffer, but I know that our products, our services, our delivery channels have all taken a new turn and a new dimension and all that. In the course of the COVID-19, women uptake within the mobile money space upscaled, because we saw so many young women sign up to become mobile money agents, because we used a lot of them to deploy most of the social interventions that government was doing and all that, to see that women were able to play a good role in that aspect. SANEF reports women constitute 15% of the mobile money agents, but they continue to play a major role for us and a very key role in the aspect of driving inclusion and all that. Therefore, it begs the need for the recruitment of more female agents and for us operators to develop products and services that speak specifically to what women really need in the field. Because most times, we sit in the offices, we just do a brain work and think, what do women need? But it's better for us to interact and collaborate, for us to know more what can we do for women, especially those in the rural and semi-urban areas and all that. We need to ensure that they are fully engaged for them to contribute their quota into wealth creation. But then there are hidden challenges. Most of them have been mentioned here, why women cannot effectively play their role in this space. For women, DFS offers many advantages over traditional financial services. We have mentioned the ESUSU, their jaw and all that. Women are more depth in terms of financial management when you think of the traditional aspect and all that, as they have control over their finances and all that. But then we observe that women also face a major challenge. There's a challenge of ethnicity, religion, tribe, and all that. All these come together to restrain the ability of women to upscale within the ladders of the financial inclusion, because these barriers, they help to curtail women's participation, especially in the Northwest, in the Northeast. If you look at most of the parameters that have been presented, this region suffer the most from the exclusion of women in financial inclusion or in driving financial inclusion and all that. So we need to look at the need for us to have conversations that deliberately address these challenges. Everybody enjoys financial services, but we need to look at how do we specifically speak to those needs that women, especially those in the rural areas. We're not talking of women in the urban area, because you all have bank accounts, more than 5 or 10 bank accounts. We're thinking of those women in the hard-to-reach locations that need that small 5,000, 10,000 to put in their business to upscale their families' well-being and all that. So those are the areas that we need to focus on. If you look at the data that we presented by FINA, CBN, and all that, we see that women still constitute the highest percentage of those who are excluded from the financial circle. But these are the figures and all that. So I'm sure we have this from the FINA reports and all that. This was picked from there. You can see that the percentage of women that are not included is quite high and all that, especially within this northern and northeast region. Then women inclusion, we are looking at what is the flip side of advancing women inclusion into the financial circle. Women financial inclusion can create greater economic stability and prosperity for women, and even for the entire families, their communities. The women build assets more quickly and all that. They also enable the ability to respond to family needs and mitigate their risk. When a woman has access to, just as importantly, control of formal products, they can contribute their own to their well-being and also the well-being of their families. Women are more concerned about the future plan for their children. I am married, I have a wife. My wife is always more concerned about which school, let's go to school. But me, as far as I'm concerned, as far as the child is going to school, that's the man's perspective. But women are more granular in driving those, so we need to pay a lot of attention to incorporating women into these schemes. A woman saves in a safe place. She saves for her children's education, her family health, and their better housing, building both security and prosperity. With greater security and prosperity, she gains greater economic empowerment. When the woman is free economically, she can direct the future direction of the family, especially those who live in the very rural and vulnerable sides of the economy. Women gender enhances economic efficiency and improves development outcomes. Women's buy into recent financial fintech innovation will be an enabling factor for the extension of financial services to the undeserved population, those that are within the hard-to-reach locations. Maybe there's what we call lady, woman, and all that, or a woman leader. If you go back home and say, I have this fintech solution, so many of your followers want to follow you and do the same thing and all that. We need to encourage and drive industry stakeholders collaboration. There's need for synergy to drive reach, coverage, and enable timely closure of existing gaps. We need a handshake between regulators of mobile money providers, fintech, and even also the telcos. Because if I want to deploy a solution to a location where there's no network, for instance, it will just only be on paper. It will not achieve the desired end state. So we need to have a collaborative approach. So all regulators must all come together to do a handshake. So delivery becomes easy for us, because I am profit oriented. I will not deploy my solution to where I will not make profit. So there's need for my regulator to encourage me, along with others who I play in the field with, to drive my service so I will be able to capture this market and make a return for my shareholders. We need to also entrench more interactive and inclusive regulatory framework and all that. The objective that this is intended to do is that to increase financial inclusion across board. It will increase access to credit. We've talked of several forms of credit, but I think the microcredit window is more appropriate for the women we intend to target by this engagement. Because the women we are targeting are not women that dwell in urban centers, but women in rural and hard to reach locations. So there's need to factor how do we deliver microcredit to these women. When I say macro, we are talking of women that need just 10, 20,000 to upscale their business. A woman that sells tomatoes and pepper does not need $1 million to do business. 5,000 naira will buy a basket of tomatoes. You know that, yeah. Yes. Yes. Not now. Okay, the women are talking. The women are talking now. we also know that it will increase the employment generation, because both for the women folk and also for youths, especially in rural areas, if a woman has an acre of farmland, for instance, farming fruits, vegetables, she can engage extra hands. That creates more labor force in the market and take people out of crime and all that. It will increase output and income for the women. It also increase the demand for financial services, because operators and providers will now be challenged to deliver more acceptable products that will answer to the true needs of the women, not just desktop projects or products. We need to visit the market to know what exactly the women need to be able to fashion our products and all that. So those are the expected uptake. For government, we expect that government should work on removing barriers to, especially loans and grants infrastructure for MMOs and agents. This is critical to business expansion.
Eat with them. And eating with them made them feel, thank you. So food goes a long way. And there are places that people have gone to that without even able to, they're like, no, I don't want to eat your food. It's not looking nice, it's, you know. And once you show that, you already cut. Yes, there's already that barrier. So yes, when we look at barriers, we have to find ways of breaking those things down. And it does go a long way. But thank you very much. Yes, we can. We are ready to do all that is necessary.
It's how do we put to use for the benefit of greater number of women, Nigerian women and girls, the massive information we received today. How do we put it to use? I know that we can become more and have more if we learn how to collaborate. But how do we do that? My mentor, John Maxwell, oh, by the way, I'm a member of John Maxwell leadership team. He said something, and I quote, "One is too small a number to achieve greatness." If you see what we have seen today, I sat down there listening, but at the same time watching. I see everybody talking from different points. The question is, at what point can we come together and collaborate and achieve greater things? My mother is 92 years old. Each time we want to give her money, I draw the money from the bank and go and give it to her. She uses her phone.
And outcome from this roundtable is to engage more stakeholders and then expand, the role of women, particularly in accessing finance and access to market, to build up and expand their activities. Meanwhile, putting women in the center stage, of the economic of this nation, because women are actually the emerging markets, and that's what we want the nation and the government and the agencies to know. You can see the room is full of a lot of government agencies and even government ministries. So that's our target and that's our expected outcome. New Faces, New Voices agenda has always been collaboration and partnership. And when you see what is happening in the room, you know that we've done very well with that area of collaboration and partnerships. But we need to build more on it, because the women too, if you have listened to all the speakers, the women that needs to be reached out to, the women that needs to be capacitated are more than what one hand can handle. So it has to be a continued process, particularly around capacity building and access to market and finance, and sustaining, that area. I mean, the space for women particularly. So our role as NFMV is to sustain that space for continuity. It's not just having access to finance or market or what, but to sustain that aspect of it.
Reasons why we don't have gender equality and financial inclusion right now. We've had a really consistent gender gap in financial access. And that's based on kind of a set of gender norms in society that restrict women in different ways. And there are also just various limitations that women face. So, for example, we've seen that people who have lower levels of education, lower levels of income, are less likely to be financially included. And we see that women, there's a big gender gap in education, right? So women in Nigeria have less access to education, tend to earn lower income. Also, financial services aren't always well designed for women. So it can be difficult for a woman to access a bank branch, for example. So we need to think about using things like agents or designing access points that are accessible for her. We also need to think about designing products and services that are relevant for women's needs. Yeah, digital financial services and technology is really important in closing the gender gap in financial access. So it can help break some of the barriers around things like distance. A lot of women in Nigeria now own mobile phones, including a lot of women who are financially excluded or underserved. So that's an important channel to reach them. Again, we have to design those digital services in a women-centric way. But that's definitely something doable, and what we've seen that digital financial services have been key to driving financial inclusion as well as women's financial inclusion globally.